Well, welcome back, everybody. Mike Anderson, many of you know, has built a career and a reputation with an intentional and a consistent focus on lifting as he climbs. Today, Mike is the Chief Digital and Information Officer at Netskope, where he sits at the intersection of security, cloud, business outcomes, helping customers and teams go faster, operate safer, and smarter. What makes Mike truly different and special isn't just what he knows, it's how he leads. Mike is, as one of his mystery questioners asked in the podcast, he's the business guy in an IT wrapper. He's comfortable in the boardroom and the scrum room. He's equally fluent in P&L and platform. So really has that special balance. And Mike organizes around outcomes. He's all about setting clear scorecards for what winning looks like. He wants people to know what it looks like. So not only do they know how to strive, but they know what it looks like when they get there. And he creates trust that turns pressure into ambition and performance. So I want to bring Mike in. Mike, welcome to the podcast, and many thanks for opening up your playbook and how you've gone about personally future-proofing your career, but also the careers of countless other people. So reflecting on a very successful career, what would you say, Mike, would be the number one thing that you've done to differentiate yourself? And maybe a part B to that, as you look ahead, do you see that changing at all? So welcome to the podcast.
That's a great question. First off, Dan, it's so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to this conversation, and I've been a big fan of the podcast, so I'm excited to be able to be a guest here as well. And so, I think one of the superpowers, if I look at my own superpower as a CIO and just in my career, has been able to, it's like, look at information, being able to assimilate that information and translate that into things that make sense to other people, whether it's, analogies or storytelling. And I think one of the best ways to do that, one of the things I always tell my teams is follow the revenue. I tell it to every CIO I meet with. You got to learn how your company makes revenue, how they bring money in the door. And that's got to be one of the first things you do when you start. That's got to be your first 90 days is learn the business you're in. And I tell everyone you can't change what you don't take time to first understand. And so if you don't understand the business, you don't understand how it operates, you're not going to be able to influence and drive the change you want. I go back to my time when I joined Schneider Electric. I went and bought my steel-tip shoes, and I went and walked plants, and I met with plant managers, and I talked to them about the challenges they had. I learned about our various systems. I flew and met with all of our teams so I could meet all of our people. And I didn't ask questions about, I didn't come from an electrical infrastructure or industrial background. I came from, being the CIO at a retail and consumer goods services provider. And so shifting those industries, I had to learn that business. And so I think that's where that superpower played out. And same thing when I came to Netskope. I'd never worked for a software company before. I'd never worked for a cyber software company before. I had really smart cyber people that worked for me in my past. But learning the cyber business and how we drive revenue in that is something that's really helped me here as well.
Yeah, it makes total sense. And you definitely carved out a niche there. I mean, here you are. For those on video, he's got his great Netskope logoed shirt on, and it kind of sets up our next question, Mike, that I want to ask you. Our good friend Charlie Feld, a legend, right? One of the first CIOs, still going strong today, doing amazing work. So many Charlieisms, but one of our favorites we've talked about many times. You know where I'm going to go with this, but well, I'll let you tell us what it is, and you're so good at this, right? And it helps you show up so different, whether you're with the board, C-suite, your team, customers. So what's that Charlieism we both appreciate?
You got to put your selling shoes on every day, and that's a love Charlie. Being in Dallas, I've had the opportunity to meet and work with Charlie before. Actually worked for someone that worked a long time for Charlie, Steve Schuckenbrock, my first CIO role. Steve was part of the Feld group and had a long journey with Charlie. And so I got to learn a lot of the Charlieisms. I love the other one he said is, if you don't like change, you're going to hate, extinction. So I love that one as well. But going back on the sales one, it's interesting. If I look at my career, I started in technology in the 90s. And, I ended up having my own startup after working in IT. But then I had a lot, I'd say in my first, big chapter of my career was really as an executive and running sales teams, running sales organizations, running business development. And so I think that gave me a different perspective. I tell our salespeople when I talk to them, I've carried a bag. I've been in your shoes before. I've had to deliver a number. And so that a lot of my career, leading up to be a CIO, I had a number that I was trying to meet. I tell a lot of people that want to be a CIO, going back on the previous question you asked me is, go take the opportunity to go run a P&L that has both a P and an L in it. So you got profit and loss, because then you start to think about those decisions you make around investments are made very different, because you have to think about what's going to drive my top line. And then what decisions do I have to take in order to make those things happen? And it helps you be a much more effective CIO, because you have to be an expert in the business. And so if you have those, go take that assignment and then come back to IT. You'll be a much, much better leader.
Mike, we've got a lot of C-level leaders listening, watching right now. And everyone knows Netskope. You guys just went public. We'll talk about that here in a couple of minutes. But what's the one-liner? If you're with a fellow CIO, CISO, what's the one-liner if you're going to sell Netskope?
Well, the first thing is, I don't try to pitch them on Netskope. I first ask them questions about their business. And so I think it varies. I think the big thing I ask people about is how are they accelerating adoption of AI but also keeping their company secure? So I usually started with a question versus a statement. And then we try to have a dialogue, and I try to encourage our salespeople as well. Ask good questions, and then have good follow-on questions, and make it natural, and use stories. And so, there's some stories I'm sure we'll talk about later in our conversation that I've used before, but I think those stories people can remember, and they can also help get a fact across. And so I think putting your selling shoes on every day when you're talking to the board, if you talk in bits and bytes and technology, you're going to lose them. And so using storytelling is one of the most critical skills I think any CIO can have, or any executive for that matter, is how can you tell a good story? And how can that help you bring your point across? I use the example of our CRM environment today. I often call it looks like the Winchester Mystery House, because it's just we keep building rooms and doors that go nowhere. And at some point, we got to figure out how do we either go tear that down and build a new modern house, and it'll probably be with the same technology we have today, just get rid of all that old technical debt, or we got to figure out how we get rid of some of those rooms that don't make sense. And so, saying that for people who live in the valley, have been to San Jose and have seen the Winchester Mystery House makes a lot of sense. And so using just simple analogies like that makes you much more effective in putting those selling shoes on every day.
Mike, one of your other superpowers, you just have this ability to balance so many things, especially those competing priorities. And so we've got a mystery questioner here, someone who knows you well, worked closely with you, who's going to really tease this out. So listen into our first mystery question.
Mike, one of the things I really appreciate about you is that you're really a business guy in an IT wrapper. You really understand value creation plans, and you're really masterful at managing the run the business necessities while transform the business opportunities. Tell us about the methods you use to lead this balance of these requirements while really honing in on the business value.
Who's that, Mike?
Annette Clayton. Loved where she was our CEO of North America when I was at Schneider Electric. And I just love her to pieces. She is amazing, great leader. I had the great opportunity to actually run into her. I was at the National Association of Corporate Directors Summit and ran into her. We got to catch up for a little bit. And, just reminds me how great of a leader she is. She always asks me two questions in every one-on-one. She'd ask me, first question is, how can I help? And the second question is, what should I be worried about? And what she told me, I brought that back up to her. She said, Mike, she goes, when I have leaders, I trust that I've hired the person that knows how to do the job, and I have to make sure that I empower them. And so that's my way of making sure that, hey, I'm giving you the help you need, not trying to manage your business for you. But then at the same time, making sure I'm aware of any risk or something that I need to be aware of as a CEO that could be concerning. And so just so many good lessons. The other funny story with Annette is she's a big Ohio State fan. I am a Texas Longhorn fan by birth, and being here in Texas. And then my wife is a Michigan Wolverine. So I married into the Michigan fan base, and I've become a big fan of Michigan. So Annette knew that. So we had this every year for the Michigan-Ohio State game. We would have this basically bet. Whoever lost, the other person had to wear the other team's jersey on stage at our North American leadership kickoff. And I remember the first time, it was 2019. And unfortunately, there was a stretch there when Urban Meyer was coaching the, Ohio State that we had a string of bad luck there. And so I had to wear the jersey. And I remember it was right before the Christmas, this package shows up. And I opened the box, and it all it says on the outside is, "Can't wait to see you in San Antonio from OHIO." And inside that was the jersey that I was going to have to wear. So she's not only a great leader, just so thoughtful, but a lot of fun to work with as well. So going back to her question that she asked, I think the job first and foremost for a CIO, you got to make sure the trains run on time. If the trains aren't running on time, that's the necessities of keeping the run going. Then you're not going to be in a job very long. But at the same time, you got to constantly figure out how do you shape your organization, how do you shape your P&L so that you can free up dollars to go invest in those transformation areas. And you can't do too many of them. If you try to do too many things, it's too many priorities for your team, you're not going to be successful. And I think you also have to make sure that when you're doing transformation, you're not doing it to somebody, you're doing it with somebody. And so how do you bring two in a box? How do you bring those teams together where you've got technology and functional expertise brought together to really go study the problem together? And when you do that, it's align on what value that's going to create for the organization, and make sure it's something you're willing to sign up for in the P&L. Because everyone will sign up for all these productivity benefits, but it never shows up in the P&L. So make sure you're locking hands around what is this investment going to do? Is it going to take cost out? And okay, if that's the case, let's agree on when. If it's going to drive revenue, let's agree on what that productivity is going to look like and how that's going to show up. Maybe it's more revenue per seller in the organization. So I think that's one of the keys when you do transformation is don't do too many of them. Make sure you keep the trains running on time. Otherwise, you won't be able to do the transformation. And make sure you've got clear line of sight to what the value is.
Really good. And it's such a great question, Annette, who's going off to do a lot of great board work now. She's on some big time boards and just such an impressive individual. And just for the record, it's the Ohio State University, Mike. Just want to make sure we get that in there. Too good. Well, I've got another or kind of a related question around the balancing act. And as executives, you all have pressure to deliver and drive business outcomes, but at the same time, great leaders are phenomenal taking care of their people. And anybody who knows you well, talk about how amazing you are as a people leader, Mike. It's just I hear from everybody, and you genuinely care about people. You invest in people. You're the epitome of the lift as you climb CIO. So I admire those things from you, and all the mystery questioners had some element of that in one of their versions of the question. But I just picked this next one. Someone that also works at Netskope, so has a line of sight around your talents here. So listen in.
Mike, one of the things that I admire about you is how much you care for your team and how important it is and how fun it is for you to mentor and coach your teams. So with that in mind, my question is, when your team is under pressure, the heat is on, the stress is there, how do you help them balance delivering results while also caring for their well-being?
Well, I couldn't miss that person.
You better not get this one wrong, buddy. I'm just telling you.
That would be my wife, Amanda Anderson. And, funny story, she would have to say that she's been here at Netskope a year longer than I had been. And that's how I actually ended up at Netskope. When she was going through her interview and they were recruiting her, she said, "Hey, would you be willing to talk to my husband? He's a CIO. I'd love for you to kind of explain what you do to him and him be able to help me understand if this is the right fit." And so I ended up talking to the chief marketing officer at the time, and he gave me the overview of the company. And I remember telling him, there's a lot of great stuff here, but I don't get this on your website. He goes, "I know, that's we're working on that. That's why we need your wife here." And one of the many reasons. And so she knows me better than anybody. She knows all my blind spots. She helps me be self-aware all the time. So it's I think the key thing is, the key thing I tell my team is we're all people first. And I used to say that, never was I more important than when we were at the Schneider Electric and it was during the pandemic and people were losing people close to them or were sick themselves. You really had to take care of your people. And that's one of the things that I believe is let's get to know people as people first. That's why, I get on a plane this Saturday, I fly to India. And what I've told my team is I'm in service of them. I'm there to meet the team, spend time with the people they want me to spend time with. I'm not there to go just sit in my room and do Zoom calls from India. I'm there to really bond with the teams. And I really believe you got to get to know people as people. And then when you have those hard times where you really have to lean in, the people are willing to go that extra mile. If they feel like you really care about them, they'll go the extra mile for you. If they feel like you're just treating them like a number or you don't really care about them, you're not going to get the same level of effort you would want. One of the small techniques that I would tell people, especially when you're meeting new teams, take a notebook around with you, a piece of paper, go around the room and ask everybody, tell me your name. Tell me which group or function you're in, because especially if you're in your first 90 days and you're meeting your team, tell me an interesting fact about yourself and write it down. And if you think back about all of the books like Dale Carnegie and, influencing people, making friends, influencing people, when you have those interesting facts, you remember those. And so the next time you see that person, ask them about that thing. Ask them, how's it going? What's the latest gig you've played, playing guitar? And those things will mean so much to people, but it also helps you remember and get to know your people first. And so that's first and foremost is know your people, and then start to think about how you invest in them. I tell people in their one-on-ones, the one-on-one is not for me, it's for you. And so it's for me to help you on your career trajectory, help you with some challenges you may be facing. And so I think when you have that orientation of a service leadership to your team, I think that really helps you get the most out of your organization.
Really, yeah, that's fantastic. And thanks so much. We actually have another question for her coming up in a couple minutes. So she had some really good insights. Again, she's got that dual lens of professional and personal, and sounds like my wife too. I call her my chief humility officer. So that's. But a couple more questions first, Mike. This next one is under the banner of kind of related, but it's remember the book, What Got You Here Won't Get You There? I just think about our profession today, and things are changing so fast. It's exciting, but there's a lot going on, and people kind of hanging in their comfort zones. And, how are you helping people show up different, think different, be set up for success different? How do you instill ambition, so that people aspire more? I think it's one of your true superpowers and gifts, Mike.
Yeah, but I tell my leadership team, I think our job as leaders is to light a fire in someone, not under them. And so to do that, you really got to dig into the passion the person has, what gets them excited. I firmly believe that everyone gets up every day wanting to do a good job. They want to make a positive impact every day. I don't think people wake up going, you know what, I think I'm going to take today easy. I'm not really going to do much. I want to do a bad job. No one says that. Everyone wants to make an impact every day. And so you just got to figure out what is that thing that ignites them. And that goes back to the previous question around, if you connect with people as people first, you can learn about what ignites somebody. And then, the key thing there as well is, you also, if you're going to ignite your team, you got to make sure they understand what winning looks like. Because if you don't know what winning looks like, you don't know when you get there. So what's the scoreboard, that I'm watching? I know a lot of times we always joke as parents, about, I'm not a huge fan of participation trophies that people just get for, being on the team. And so I think a lot of us like to be able to look at the scoreboard. Even when you say the score doesn't matter, you always see the little kids looking at the scoreboard to see what the score is. And so, that's been one of my passions of life, is coaching kids sports as well. I had the opportunity to do that for a number of years with my kids. And so it's that, knowing the other thing is knowing the strengths of your team. I just went through my last leadership offsite. We did Strengths Finder from Gallup. And I feel like I love sports analogies, and because Brene Brown says it's okay to use them, and I'm a big fan of Brene Brown, I'll use them as well. But it's if you're playing football and you have a quarterback that's a great passer and a great runner, putting an offense in place that makes them a drop back passer only, where they can't use their running skills, probably isn't going to play to the strengths of the person. And so to get people to aspire to do more is you got to know the strengths of your team. You got to know how you can play into those, and you got to make sure that, as you hire people into your organization, you're self-aware of your own blind spots, so you can hire people that then fill those and bring the skills you need to balance out the team. And so I think that's one of the things you really have to do is let your team know what winning looks like. Find that thing that's going to spark that fire in them, and then challenge people to do things different. One of the things I've asked my team this year to do around AI is tell me something every week that you learned or did with AI that you didn't know before this week. What was something new or different? What was a problem you solved? And it's really just, we have to exercise that muscle and have them think differently. Otherwise, we'll just continue to do things the way we've always done them and won't think differently. And so I think you can really challenge people to think differently and try new things.
As you were talking, I was thinking of our friend Anu Kare from Oshkosh Corporation, who you know well, and someone else who does a phenomenal job of instilling ambition into his culture. And you just see how people just aspire. They just drive more not because they're being pushed. What'd you say? Light a fire in someone, not under them. I'm going to use that, Mike. So I'll give you credit for sure. You talked about sports, you talked about football. You talked about fun facts. I want to put them all together in this next question. You played football. You played college football. So tell us what position did you play? Maybe how did that make you a better leader? Maybe even more adaptive as a leader today?
Yeah, so I trained when I went to college. I played offensive tackle in high school, and I transitioned to center when I got into college. And it was a big transition. I think it was a lot because I'm not 6'5", I'm 6'3". So making that transition, I wasn't tall enough to be able to be an offensive tackle in college. But what was really great about that is, if you turn on the game on Saturday or Sunday and watch the center's got the unique role they have is you have to be able to read the entire field of people in front of you. You got to look at everything, the linebackers, the defensive linemen. You got to be able to call what stunts you think are going to happen. So you're making all the line calls to the rest of the offensive line. And so you've got that pressure. You've also got the pressure of the fact you probably had the biggest guy on the other team in a nose guard that's lined up across from you. And you're about to get smacked in the mouth. Go back to the Tyson, everyone thinks they're prepared if they get punched in the mouth. I think we've all heard that quote before. But, you've got that. And you got the fact you got to snap the ball to the quarterback and you're going to be one-handed for a second. So it teaches you a lot about, there's a lot about failure there because you're not going to succeed every single time. And then you got to get back up, especially as a freshman when I ran center on the practice squad for our starting defense. And I remember our nose guard at the time, his nickname was Steak. And Steak would say, he goes, "Hey, freshman," he goes, "Come on, man, you're working too hard every play." I said, "I'm working really hard because the guy on Saturday is going to work really hard against you too. And so if I don't do that, then you're not going to be prepared for Saturday." And so, I think you learn so much being part of a team. It doesn't have to be football, just I think team sports, because I think everything we do in work is a team sport. And so learning how to be part of a team, how each person plays their role, the strengths of your teammates, I think is such a critical life skill that helps you both in your professional world, but also in your personal world as well.
What was that nose guard's name?
His nickname was Steak.
Okay, that tells you all you need to know. That's precious. Well, Mike, I mentioned that we had another question from Amanda Anderson, your Chief Humility Officer / wife / work colleague. And I think it really embodies your leadership style and really how you're future-proofing your teams and your company. So let's listen into Amanda again.
I admire you as being a visionary leader. Can you describe a time when you inspired your team to embrace a bold or unconventional idea? And then how did you go about getting their buy-in for this crazy idea?
I love this. I want to hear this answer.
So first and foremost, when you have these ideas, you don't want to do things to people. You want to bring them with you. And so I think that's important in any kind of idea. I think there's learning the skills of how to use influence with people. So you don't just drop it on a call with everyone. This is what we're doing. You also want your teams to own the decision and be with you. And so it's a lot of small conversations that have to happen. That's how you get people on board with this. And it goes back to the very first question you asked me, which is around superpowers and understanding the business you're in. And so being able to go to your teams and explain to them, the problem that someone has and how you're solving that. A great example I'm looking at right now is I look at our sellers, I look at what they do, They go into our CRM, they pull out a name of a company, you go to Google, now they have the power of AI. So they go to Gemini, they go ask information about the company, they process their financial statement to get their information. They then, once they come up with a good reason why they're going to reach out to a particular company, they then go look for people they're going to reach out to. So they go to LinkedIn and they go grab some people's information. They go to another tool to go get a good phone number and email so they can reach out to them. They go back to our CRM and they enter that information in, and then they go to another tool to then launch a process that says, okay, here's my tailored email that I'm going to send to someone, and then here's all the follow-ups I need to have. I need to call them tomorrow. I need to send another email on day 3, and so forth. And so if you think about a seller in that experience, so I think understanding that and being able to, and that happened by going out and having conversations with sellers. Tell me about what the day in life looks like. What are you going through? And so now what we're doing is we're working with a technology company. We've automated that entire process to where now it gives them all the information right in front of them with all the signals they need. And so I would say that's kind of a crazy idea, is like, how do you replace? And so a lot of people, getting them aligned around first telling the story around what the day in the life is, helps people understand how maybe that crazy idea isn't so crazy. And that's how you get them to embrace it. But then you got to start small. You can't try to boil the ocean. And so in this case, start with one team. It's kind of like the crossing the chasm with Jeffrey Moore, and you got your bowling pin strategy. What pen are we knocking down first? And then what are the next 2 pins and the next 3 pins? And then I'm a big believer that we're all humans. And so you got to play into human psychology. So there's people have fear of missing out. And so if you start creating some FOMO around the things you're trying to do, then people want to be part of it. And when you see a team that's winning, people want to be on the winning team, and they have fear of missing out. So use human psychology in the things you do. I think, that's the key of change management is really, how do we use human psychology to accomplish the goals that we're trying to do?
I always say everything's easy till you add the humans, right? And now it gets a little bit more interesting, and kind of a cool lead into this next question, and actually mystery question. And Mike, I've seen it over my 40 years. You've seen it in your career. You see organizations that work really hard. They become great, world-class, whatever you want, high-performing, whatever you want to say, right? Something changes, and humans have this tendency to backslide, right? It's just so hard to watch, right? It's almost like you're at an intersection, you see 2 cars coming, they're going to crash, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? So this next mystery question is going to kind of tease that out a little bit about the whole idea of sustaining success.
Mike, you have a remarkable ability to absorb and process information to drive innovation. Imagine it's 3 years from now, and your organization is innovating at a pace that impresses even you, largely without your direct intervention. Looking back from that future, what were the crucial mindsets, behaviors, and systems you have successfully instilled in your leadership team to create that self-sustaining momentum?
All right. Well, Clint Clark, I've had the good fortune. Clint was on my team at Schneider Electric. Funny story how I originally met Clint. I came in, it was one of those first, I think, 90 days on the job. And we were talking, he was in our finance organization, and he was the finance analytics person. And we got on the call, and my team wasn't delivering what they needed to, and he was letting me hear it on this call, and that was on that call as well. And I came away from that and I go, he really knows what he's doing. So I picked up the phone, I called Clint afterwards, and I said, how would you like to come over and be part of my team and help me solve the problems that you see? Because it seems like you know it really well, and help build that team. So I recruited him to come be in my team at Schneider Electric, and we did some great transformation. And I'll talk a bit about, to answer his question, some of those behaviors and things we instilled, because we did it in the team at Schneider Electric. We're doing the same things. He joined me in January of this year here at Netskope, and is helping me in that journey here as well. First and foremost, I remember when we think about our organizations, we're only as good as the frontline people in our organizations, because they're the ones that are closest to the problem. And so one of the first behaviors is empowerment. You have to empower your people that are closest to the problem to solve the problem. And if we think about, we always talk about spans and layers in organizations. And so as you move up and you have more layers in an organization, a lot of times the details get fuzzier and fuzzier before they get to the top. And so, I'm a big believer in having very flat organizations so that we can, the communications from the frontline people to management. I think someone at one point said everything between the frontline and the CEO is bureaucracy. But I think the role we play as leaders is to really empower people. It goes back to that. We got to light a fire in people, not under them. That's one of the other behaviors. You got to let people know what winning looks like. And you also got to tear down the organizational boundaries. I think that's one of the things that's been great about Netskope is, we're not thinking in silos. And I think you got to go outside the silos, break those down, work cross-functionally. When you think about agility, it's not a project management principle, it's a mindset. And so one of those things that I instill in my team is that agile mindset. The only constant in life is change. And it's how we continually adapt to that change. And I would always tell my teams, it was funny, I would say when I would go on vacation, I'd have a phone that was like that I called the bat phone because we go up to northern Michigan and now there's internet up there with Starlink. But I would say all I got up there is a bat phone. So if you need me, this is the number to dial. But hopefully we don't have to have that bat phone ring because my job is to empower you to be able to solve problems. If you're waiting on me to solve problems, then that's a bad thing. That means I can never really go enjoy vacation and have a good time because I got, things stop happening. Decisions aren't made. I feel like I have to always be connected and dialed in. And so I encourage my leaders to think that same way is empower your people, give them tell them what winning looks like. Make sure they understand the guardrails they need to work within, but then let them run as fast as they possibly can to go accomplish those goals. And that empowerment will light a fire in people because people don't like to be told what they have to do. They like to know what is it, the outcome you want to drive, and let me go figure out how to accomplish that outcome. And so I think that's the key to that self-sustaining leadership is really around empowerment. And it's really around helping people understand what does that winning look like and what are my operating parameters? That's what you're going to tell people. What's the mission? What's the operating parameters?
Yeah, thank you, Clint, for that question. I was really looking forward to your answer to it, Mike, because those nuggets you put in there about driving innovation at pace that impresses even you. And he goes on to say, largely without your direct intervention. So all that, completely lines up. And I'm glad he's there. I look forward to seeing what he does there with you and your team. And next question, Mike, is going to be fun for you on two levels. One is we talked about you being a big developer of your people, right? And you're also big in giving back in a lot of ways to the community. And so this is our Tech for Good scholarship question, right? So this is our 9-month IT leadership specific program, TechLX, which you've actually sent people to over the years. But do you have a STEM nonprofit in mind that you'd like to gift that seat to, Mike?
Yeah, so there's actually a group. They're not a nonprofit per se, but they partner with nonprofits. It's a group called Tech Allies in Dallas. They've put on an event for years called Technology Ball, where we all we called it IT prom because we'd all get together in our tuxedos and people in their gowns, and we'd all get together and raise money for STEM and donate money to whether it's a local university or working with schools. And so I've worked with that group now for almost 15 years. Karen Bruno runs that organization. That's how I've met a lot of my friends here, like Blake Holman and Robbie Malik. We had an event where there was an auction off for like a whiskey event. So the vendors got to go have whiskey with us. That's how we got to know each other and became really good friends. And then that would raise tens of thousands of dollars for STEM. And so that's one that I've always been very passionate about because, we always have to make sure we're playing the long game. And so how are we bringing more people into the workforce? And you got to start with kids that are in high school. And I think we also have to make sure we have good diversity. How do we get good diversity of people into these roles? Because that diversity is what helps us think about problems differently. And so that's why I've always been passionate about STEM.
That's amazing. I actually didn't know about that organization, so thank you for that. And I know the name. I know Karen Bruno. I know Ravi. I know Blake. All amazing people. So, and you have the whiskey. So let me know when the next one is going to be. I'll be there. That's good stuff. Well, thank you for that, Mike. Got a few more questions for you, if you could. I think this next one kind of a little bit of a kind of poking the bear a little bit, but I think all this. But years ago, you're high flying. You've got this great career going. You were poised to become, probably the next big enterprise CIO for a Fortune company. And you made the jump to this, at that time, little known startup. Like we were all scratching our heads like, what's he thinking? Right. And well, obviously you made the right bet. So tell us about that story. What was going on in your head at that time, your world? You made a bet. Catch us up on how that turned out.
Yeah. So first off, I was thinking about that journey. I think one of the things I always encourage people to do is make sure you have a personal board of directors. And so I've got my own personal board of directors. They're people that have been mentors throughout my career, that I have relationships. I consider Nat one of those people that's on my personal board of directors. And so when I'm thinking about decisions that I want to make, I always reach out. I have conversations with them. And, I remember when I was contemplating this change, someone said, if you can show the agility to go from being a CIO in a large global organization to be nimble enough to go work in a startup, that agility will make you invaluable in the industry. That'll be huge for your career. And that was actually from a peer at Schneider Electric that I spoke to. I'll leave them nameless in this conversation, but we had that dialogue. And so, the good fortune is my wife worked here, so I got to observe the culture from afar for the better part of a year. And I got to see how the Netskope treated their employees during the pandemic. I mean, they sent warm blankets to the house. They really looked after their people. So I got to be, I was an extension of the Netskope family before I ever joined it directly myself as part of the team. And so that gave me a little bit of that was a little bit cheating maybe. But that just, happens because my wife works here. That makes it a little bit easier on that side. But what really attracted me to it is, going back to making an impact, is a CIO in a tech company, you are oftentimes the buyer. And so your ability to influence things outside of IT, like how do you go have a conversation with the CIO? How does the IT organization operate? Well, how do they make decisions? What do the different people care about? So your ability to make an impact there that impacts your product roadmaps, it impacts your go-to-market motions, your impact can be so much greater. And so it's interesting. I sit in a lot of these VC groups with common peers that are CIOs at tech companies. And at one point they asked a CEO, at what point do you think you should bring a CIO into a startup? Oftentimes you see CISOs coming in very early today because you got to have security or you can't sell your solution to somebody. But I think CIOs oftentimes can also play a very similar role as well as the CISO, really helping you not just think about, laying the right foundations, but helping you understand your buyer. And so that's what's been exciting for me because unlike when I was at Schneider Electric or I was at Crossmark, where I was in an industry that I didn't grow up in, but I had to learn when I got there, this is one I've grown up in. And I think for a lot of us that it's exciting for me every day because my impact is so much broader.
Well, maybe talk for a minute, Mike, about your role or roles. I mean, you run technology for Netskope, which has been growing like crazy, but kind of talk about the dual roles and how that really taps into your different skill sets, your different superpowers.
Yeah, so in addition to being CIO, I lead our strategy office. So we have a number of areas in there. So we have some advisory group where we've got a lot of former CIOs and CISOs globally spread out across the world that help inform our strategy. How do we think from a product standpoint, from a go-to-market standpoint? They help us think about verticals and what use cases we go after in specific verticals. They do coaching sessions with our sales teams as well. So we have that advisement group. We have competitive strategy. So we're looking at the market and looking at competitive intelligence, which, for any company strategy is important to be watching what's going on in the market. What are your competitors doing? So I have that. And then I've got one that was created because when I first came in, I made the comment, I said, look, when we buy technology, the first thing I understand is the CIO can sign off on a certain amount of a PO or a purchase. And then once you go above that level, you got to get more people bought into it. And so you got to have a really tight business case. And the first question that I always would ask my teams, like we just went through budgeting, was, am I asking for more money or am I working within my existing budget envelope? Because if I need more money, I got to be able to put a strong business case forward for what value is this going to create for the organization relative to other investments we may make in other parts of the organization. And so that's important. But even when you get it and you've got the budget approved and it's working within your existing budget, you still have to have a good business case with a good bottom line up front to be able to show up the chain so that you can get sign-offs. And sometimes those decisions can go all the way to the board if the purchase is big enough. And so with that, we created a team that I call value engineering. So it's basically finance types that understand the moving parts, that can create the business case, the financial business case to say, how is this going to impact your budget? Are you paying for it with what you have? Are you looking for new? And then what's the business value of what you're going to get if you do this? So that's another team that I've got at Netskope that reports to me as well. Sometimes I wish I could pivot them towards my internal IT team and have them put business cases together, but I think they bring more value being focused with our customers.
Yeah, what a great role. And, I get it now, right? Like why you made that move. Company just went public, a few weeks ago. I'm not going to ask you any forward questions that you can't answer. So I'm not going to put you in that spot. But, I used to, I don't know if you remember this, just a personal story. So we were together in Dallas. You played a big role in our exec LX leadership program in Dallas. I forget, maybe it was like a Tuesday night. I think it was a Tuesday night. And you're like, yeah, you were just very calm. You're like, yeah, I gotta be in New York tomorrow. So early flight. And then I find out tomorrow when I put on the news, that was when you were in New York taking the company. That was when the public announcement happened, right? The big IPO pop. So you were so good. You never gave any hint as to what was going on.
Yeah, well, you just made our investor relations person, our CFO, very happy that I didn't give anything away. But I tell you, that was a once in a lifetime opportunity. It was so fun to be there. I've almost been here half of the company's existence as a company now. 5 years. We've been around almost 13 years now as an organization. But so not quite half, but close. My wife's closer to half than me. But such a fun experience, and the culture here is so great. Sanjay, our CEO, has really, set the tone from the top for the organization around our culture. One of the things doesn't matter where ideas come from. They come from wherever they come from in the organization. So we don't, hierarchy is not important for inside of Netskope. And so it's just a fun place to be. And it's fun to be winning. And I think we do a good job of making sure we tell people what winning looks like so they know when they get there. And that moment was just so much fun. It was fun to celebrate. It was fun to see all of our team members and just the excitement. We did a global simulcast internally where we had all of our offices around the world with people from NASDAQ there interviewing our employees. And luckily, everything went off well, kind of with all the connectivity coming back to New York so that people could have a great experience. But it was just so much fun to celebrate with all of our teams. But, as Sanjay says, we're in the first inning. And now we're a public company. Now, like any public company, you just have to continue to execute and deliver on results. But, you go back to like Patrick Lencioni and you talk about culture. Culture is what will beat strategy every day of the week. And so having the right people with the right culture is really what helps us succeed as an organization.
Yeah, 100%. And I'm glad you mentioned Sanjay's name. Everyone who talks about him just talks about him being that rare combination of brilliant, visionary, human, right? So those are all great traits. So that sets you up for that sustained winning, through the ninth inning and beyond. So, Mike, I'm a big believer in payback. Okay. So it's time for your payback with the next mystery question. All right. So may give you a little bit of a clue, but maybe not. And so you talked about your different roles, right? You talked about the strategy role, engaging with customers. So this person has a lens through as a peer, but also part of that audience. So let's check it out.
I am so lucky to be a part of the vast network of people you brought together. It comes from such a selfless place, constantly introducing individuals you believe could build a constructive relationship and bringing people together to share your knowledge and facilitate conversations. Whether it has to do with matching individuals to opportunities or connecting people with similar interests or experiences, you are quick to invest the time. What drives you to be such a great super connector?
Well, love Danielle. And I got the privilege of being a mystery questioner on her podcast. And so right. It's super exciting and loved her episode immensely. One of the things that it's interesting, there was a book a long time ago called His Needs, Her Needs, and it talked about this idea of a relationship bank account. Every time you do something that's good, you make a positive, a deposit. Every time you do something that's not so good, you make a withdrawal from that. So maybe it's like leaving dirty laundry out or not doing the dishes in your personal life. But I think that applies in the professional world as well. And so one of the things I encourage people to do is always be striving every single day to make positive deposits in relationship accounts. And you never know. It's a small world. And when you do that, there's a good feeling. When you do something good for someone else, that feels good to you as well. And so that's for me, it's, there's recruiters will call me about jobs and I'm not looking for a job, but I'm like, I'll be happy to introduce you to a few people I know that might be interested. And that, to me, those are making deposits or connecting people and I think the network is so important. Every job that I've had in my career, now Netskope, my wife came here, so that kind of, maybe there's some cheating there, but every job I've had has been because of the people that I've known that I've made deposits in those relationship accounts with before that then made those connections. And so I really think we have a responsibility to always pay it forward and always be helpful. The other one I always tell people just from a culture standpoint is always be kind. You may disagree with the problem. You may disagree with what the solution looks like. Don't attack the person, attack the problem. You can always be kind. So I've always had a zero tolerance for bullies in organizations. Is something I don't believe in. It goes back to we're all people first. And so always be kind and you always look to make those deposits. And I tell our sales team that all the time. It's like, how can you make a deposit in that CIO or that person you're trying to call on? How can you make a deposit in that relationship account so you have a positive balance to draw from?
Yeah, really good, Mike. And Danielle Bischoff-Forsyth, episode 73, really special. You had a great question for her at that time. And her company, talk about winning, 7 Brew, right? They just opened their 500th store, cafe, and they are just going gangbusters. So what a story there. It's just so fun to watch her thrive. Anyway, special people. We're in a great profession, Mike. You just think of the people that are calling in and our friends here. I've got another one. Someone who's known you a long time. All right, a long time. And so I'm going to have a mystery question. And then I also poked the bear and I'm like, hey, give me something meaty. So I've got a follow-up question after the mystery question. So check this out.
Hey, Mike, I admire many things about you, but there's one thing that stands above the rest. You've always demonstrated an uncanny ability to overcome adversity, even grow from it, all while keeping a super positive attitude. I'm curious to know how you developed this superpower and if you think it's something you can help develop in others.
So Alan Rakin, I grew up with Alan. He is one of my best friends. He was in my wedding. He lives nearby. We went to high school together. So he's seen me through a lot of different adversities in life and a lot of mistakes that I've had to learn from. There's some that we probably won't get into in this podcast, but maybe over a drink next summer together. But yeah, Alan, great guy. And I think it goes back to one of the skills I look for when I'm interviewing people is I look for that perseverance. I want to know that when is the time you've been knocked down and then you got back up? What did you learn from it? And so a lot of times I'll ask people questions on interviews around, tell me a time you had when would you have a failure in life? And it could be personally, could be professionally. What did you learn from it? And so I'm looking for also some authenticity, like if it feels really, surface level, because we've all had major failures in life, whether they're personal failures, professional failures. I mean, I had my own startup in the .com days. We didn't go gangbusters. We had a great idea, but I learned looking back now, trying to create a category that doesn't exist is really hard from a technology standpoint. And so, but I learned so much from that, and I made so many great connections. And so I think that's one of the things that I look for. And so teaching your teams to Alan's question around, the staying positive is first and foremost is you're going to make failures and that's okay. Don't fail the same way multiple times, so learn from your failures. The other thing is, I think a lot of times is just as humans, we can beat ourselves up. You have a bad day and you forget about all the positive things that you've done for other people, for the company you work for, the companies you work for. So one of the things I always tell people is create a happy folder. So maybe it was like a positive letter someone sent you. Maybe it was a LinkedIn recommendation they wrote. Put those things in a folder somewhere. It could be digital, it could be physical. When you're having a bad day and you feel like nothing's going right, pick that up and read a few of those and remind yourself that, this is just a bad day. And I think that's extremely important because we talk a lot about, one of my other passions is mental health. And I think that's so important because, you're going to have challenges. You're going to have parents. My dad, when he passed away from cancer, that was hard. You never know what's going on in someone else's life. That was several years back now, but you never know what someone else is going through. And so and again, goes back to we're all people first, get to know your people. And then, you never know what that other person's going through. So you're not walking a mile in their shoes. And so take time to be empathetic, listen, but know that it's going to be better. I think that's important because suicide prevention is the other side of that I'm really passionate about. So how can we save lives and help people know that, may be bad today, but it's going to be better tomorrow, and be, watching out for that.
The happy folder, right? It's just such a simple thing. And I know people who do that. And let's just face it, the world ain't an easy place, right? It's messy and it's a grind some days, but it's still great. So that's a great tip. And Alan, thank you so much. And Alan, I'm like, Alan, give me something else. So see, here's a comment that Alan made. He said, Mike is one of the nicest and most trusting people I've ever known. In high school, he and I were in student council together, right? Each summer we'd attend a statewide student council camp. You were one of those guys, weren't you? So he says, for whatever reason, Mike seemed to be a magnet for mishaps at these camps, okay? One summer, he broke his toe in the shower. Another time, we broke a chandelier throwing a football. So the world's going to know all this now, Mike. And but the best one occurred. And can you just give the quick story about the people that were the door check hosts and what happened there?
Well, these are those lessons learned, those failures in life we learn about being too trustworthy. So if you ever, back in this time frame we were growing up, there was those Z Cavarici pants that you used to wear. I'm not sure if you're familiar with those, but they had the pockets that were really shallow. So I always carried like a money clip. So I had my money clip in there, and I was afraid it was going to fall out on the dance floor while we were at the student council's dance night. And so they had this check room. And I guess I was just maybe naive, maybe too trusting. And so people were checking their coats and bags and purses and what have you. And they're like, well, they said, just write your name on this piece of paper and, put your room number on here just in case we forget, that you got it. We can get your things back to you. So people like put their room keys on there, all kinds of things. They put it on, and just what happened, this is nefarious characters, and they were doing that so they could rob everyone while they were at the dance. So they actually took my money. So I lost everything in my money clip. They took the keys, went back to people's rooms, and they had the room numbers, and they went in and they basically took everything from the dorms where we had our things. So it was actually a travesty that happened, but Alan has never, ever let me live that down. He always tells that story. That was what I was going to tell you over a drink, but now it's out in the public.
That is incredible. Thank you, Al. The money clip. I had a money clip one day. What happened to the money clip, right? It was a thing.
It was a funny story. I was buying gifts for some of the team for an IPO gift. I wanted to get them something thoughtful. And one of the things we talk about as a company is grit. And one of the cities that uses the word grit is Detroit. So if you look at Detroit Lions, they talk about grit, with the team there. And so, I bought gifts for everyone from Shinola, which is a Detroit, watchmaker, and they make leather goods. And so I was buying it for different gifts for my business partners that support me. They were at my leadership meeting. And so I wanted to get them something. So I put a lot of thought with the person in the store. Do I get them a billfold? Is it a trifold? Is it a bifold? Is it this really cool money clip? And then they were asking me all questions about their age. I'm like, I really like a money clip because I still carry money because I got to tip doorman, and it's really hard to do square cash with them these days. And so they said, no, you got to get the bifold, because I kind of told them where I thought their age was. And so I got them the bifold, and then sure enough, they both went back and exchanged it for a money clip. But it was, So yeah, I'm a fan of the money clip.
Well, Mike, this has been fantastic. I've had so much fun. I knew it would be a blast. And thanks to all your Misty questioners. Thanks for letting me badger you here. And, we covered a lot of ground. I love how you're all the way from light a fire in people, not under them. You talked about running the business, transforming the business, lifting people as you climb. Your business first in an IT wrapper, and that helped us unpack that. So I think you gave us a lot of takeaways, a great checklist. I'd encourage people to go back and listen, watch again, take some good notes, because there's so many rich nuggets there. And a little teaser, 8 days from now, we're going to launch your article on CIO.com. And I really want to get into your practitioner, just your perspective as you took a company from startup to IPO. So many rich learnings in that, Mike. So I want to unpack that with you. So otherwise, I just want to thank you. I want to thank our audience. It's growing around the world, the passion of this thing. People are so positive about it. I just can't thank everyone enough. But Mike, truly, thank you for all you do for your people, for our industry, our profession. And I can't wait for our next collaboration and texting you wherever you are in the world.
And thank you so much. It's such an honor and a privilege to be able to be on the podcast.